The fungicide you purchased at the garden center cost you $15. It came with a warning label that required a double read, yet the white powder returned to your leaves within a single week. Here is what the chemical aisle never disclosed to you. There is a plain brown bottle sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now. 3% hydrogen peroxide. It is the same substance you dab on a scraped knee, and it costs about $1 at the dollar store, rarely exceeding $4 anywhere else. In one published greenhouse trial regarding powdery mildew, a diluted spray of this liquid knocked the disease severity down from over 90% of the leaf surface to approximately 12%. That is the exact same molecule your own plants already produce inside their own cells to defend themselves. We are going to discuss that specific spray and the sick plant it rescues a bit later in this video. $1 against $15, 12% against 90%. Stay with me, because this information changes how you garden. There are 9 tricks, 9 specific tested ways to use one inexpensive bottle of hydrogen peroxide to save a plant that is sick, drowning, or already half gone. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which problem each one solves, exactly how much to mix right down to the teaspoon, and exactly when to walk away and not reach for the bottle at all, because that last point matters as much as the other 8. Before we start, do one thing for me. Drop in the comments what state you are watching from and whether you garden mostly indoors, outdoors, or both. Where you live changes everything here. The long, cold winters in New England and the Midwest, the heat and humidity down south, or the dry air in the mountain states, all of it shapes which of these you will reach for most. I read every single one of those comments. Now, one ground rule you will hear me repeat, because it keeps you safe. Every single mix in this video starts from standard 3% hydrogen peroxide, the kind found on the shelf at Walmart, Target, CVS, or your dollar store. Do not use the strong industrial stuff. We will talk about why at the very end. The fungus gnat drench. You know these little pests, those tiny black flies barely 1/8 of an inch long that rise up in a cloud every time you water, hovering around your kitchen window and your favorite pothos. They are not just annoying. A single female lays up to 200 eggs in the moist top layer of your soil. Down in that top inch, the larvae are quietly chewing on your plant's fine root hairs, which is why a healthy plant suddenly starts to sulk for no obvious reason. Here is the mechanism, and it is beautifully simple. Hydrogen peroxide, written H2O2, is just water, H2O, carrying one extra loosely attached oxygen atom. The moment it touches moist soil, that extra atom breaks away. That is the fizzing you see. To a soft-bodied gnat larva sitting in that wet soil, that sudden burst of oxygen is an oxidative shock that ruptures it on contact. This is not folk wisdom. Cornell Cooperative Extension recommends exactly this, mixing 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 4 parts water and pouring it over the soil. They note plainly that the mixture fizzes as it attacks the larvae. So, here is your recipe, and you can do it in the next 5 minutes. Let the top inch of soil dry out completely first, because the larvae live up there, and a dry surface drives them down to meet the drench. Then, mix 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 4 cups of water. Pour it slowly across the whole surface of the pot until you see it run out the drainage holes at the bottom. It will foam. That foam means it is working. Wait 7 to 10 days, then do it one more time to catch the next batch that has hatched, because their life cycle runs in waves. Pair it with a few yellow sticky traps to catch the adults and break the cycle for good. And here is the bonus. That same flush rinses out the crusty white fertilizer salt that builds up in old potting mix, the stuff that slowly burns roots from below. You are killing the gnats and cleaning the soil in a single pour. Quick thing before the next point. If you are getting something out of this and you are not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that now. I am not going to beg you. I will just tell you the truth about how this works. YouTube will not reliably show you my videos unless it sees you as a regular here. One tap fixes that. Then, the next time I put out something that saves you a plant or saves you $15 at the garden center, you will actually see it. That is the whole pitch. Sterilizing your pots, trays, and tools before you ever plant a thing in them. Most of the heartbreak in a garden does not start with the plant. It starts with a dirty pot. Last year's fungal spores and bacteria cling to the inside of that container all winter long, waiting in the dried-on soil for something young and vulnerable to attack. The mechanism here is the same oxidation, just turned against the surface instead of the soil. The reactive oxygen in peroxide tears apart the cell walls of those leftover spores, and then within minutes it breaks down into nothing but water and oxygen. No toxic film is left behind. Compare that to the bleach so many people reach for, which leaves fumes that sting your eyes, and a residue you then have to rinse repeatedly before it is safe to plant in. Master gardeners and University Extension seed starting guides recommend peroxide for exactly this reason, and you will see it in the sanitation section of nearly every serious seed starting guide published. Here is how you do it. Knock the old dirt out. Scrub the pots in warm, soapy water to lift off the crusted debris. Then spray every surface inside and out with 3% hydrogen peroxide straight from the bottle until it is dripping. Let it sit for 10 to 20 minutes so it has time to work. Rinse, let it dry, and you are ready to plant. You can find that 3% bottle right next to the bandages at any pharmacy and the trays and pots at Home Depot or Lowe's. The bonus is the part you will appreciate most. No bleach fumes, nothing dangerous if it splashes on your skin or clothes, and it is safe to do at the kitchen sink with grandchildren standing right next to you. You get to reuse last spring's trays without carrying last spring's disease forward into this year's seedlings. The seed soak that wakes up stubborn seeds. This one turns peroxide from a cleaner into something closer to a starting gun. A lot of seeds, especially the hard-coated ones, simply refuse to wake up on schedule, and you sit there staring at an empty tray, wondering what went wrong. Here is why peroxide changes that. It does two things at once. It softens that tough seed coat so water and oxygen can finally reach the embryo inside, and it breaks down abscisic acid, the hormone that holds a seed locked in dormancy. Take away the lock, and the seed gets the signal to go. The proof here is genuinely strong, not a blogger's hunch. Scientists with the United States Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Research Service, in a study published in the journal Frontiers in Plant Science in 2022, found that soaking sugar beet seeds in a peroxide solution improved germination by more than 70% compared to plain water. Researchers have documented similar gains across barley, common bean, corn, wheat, pea, and sunflower. So here is your recipe. Stir 1 teaspoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of water. Drop your seeds in and let them soak for about 2 hours, or overnight for the really hard-coated ones like morning glory, sweet pea, nasturtium, and parsley. The seeds famous for taking their sweet time. Then plant as usual. The bonus is what every gardener wants in the spring. Faster sprouting, stronger early seedlings, and a more even tray with far fewer of those frustrating empty cells where nothing ever came up. If you start seeds indoors before your last frost, and most of us north of the South have to, this is how you make the most of every seed in the packet, stopping damping off before it wipes out an entire tray overnight. If you have ever started seeds indoors, you may have lived this nightmare. The seedlings come up green and hopeful, an inch tall, and then one morning they have all toppled over at the soil line, pinched and rotted, as if something reached up in the night and cut them down. That something is a group of water molds and fungi, Pythium and Rhizoctonia among them, that thrive in cool, wet, stagnant seed-starting mix and strike right where the tender stem meets the soil. Peroxide oxidizes those pathogens at the surface where they attack, and the released oxygen makes that top layer of soil a far less welcoming place for them to live. The fix has to be gentle because seedlings are fragile and easy to overwhelm. Mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 2 cups of water, and lightly mist the surface of the mix or water with it once. Then, do the 3 things that matter just as much. Run a small fan nearby for airflow, water from the bottom so the surface stays drier, and stop overwatering, which is the real invitation damping off is waiting for. For those of you starting tomatoes, peppers, and onions indoors through a long Midwest or New England winter, this is what lets you get a jump on the season without losing a whole flat to one bad morning and having to start the whole thing over. Before the next one, I am curious and I genuinely want to know, have you ever loved a plant to death by watering it too much? Be honest. Tell me in the comments which plant it was and what finally tipped you off that you were drowning it. I have done it more times than I want to admit, and the next 3 tricks are built for exactly that plant. The spray that took powdery mildew from over 90% of the leaf down to around 12%. Here is why it works. Powdery mildew is that ghostly white dust that creeps across your squash and zucchini, your bee balm, your garden phlox, your roses, and your lilacs in the muggy back half of summer. It is a fungus, and on the leaf surface it builds a web of fine threads called hyphae and pushes out spores by the thousands, spreading faster the more humid the air gets. When you spray dilute hydrogen peroxide directly onto it, the oxidative burst ruptures those fragile fungal threads and spores on contact, drying them out and stopping them from reproducing across the rest of the leaf. And here is the part that still surprises people. Your plants already manufacture hydrogen peroxide inside their own tissues. A 2024 scientific review documented that plants use it as a signaling molecule, a kind of internal alarm that helps coordinate their stress defenses and even guides the growth of their roots. So, when you spray it on, you are not introducing some foreign chemical the plant has never met. You are reinforcing a defense it already speaks the language of. In a published trial on cucumber and squash, researchers found a dilute peroxide treatment cut powdery mildew severity from over 90% down to around 12%. I want to be honest with you about that number because you deserve it. That was a controlled trial, and your results in the backyard will vary with the humidity, the plant, and how early you catch it. This is a powerful knockback, not a one-and-done cure, but it is a real one, and it costs you almost nothing. Here is the recipe, and write this down. 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide in 1 gallon of water. Spray both sides of the leaves, the tops and the undersides, because the fungus hides underneath where you forget to look. And this part is critical, so do not skip it. Spray in the early morning or the evening, never in the full midday sun, because sunlight plus peroxide on a wet leaf can scorch the tender growth you are trying to save. Repeat once a week as long as you see it, and give your plants room to breathe, because airflow is half the battle with mildew. The bonus is that the very same spray damages aphids and spider mite eggs on contact, so you are treating the fungus and discouraging soft-bodied pests in one pass across the leaf. $1, 12% in the trial. Both sides of the leaf in the cool of the day. That is the trick I promised you at the start. The root rot rescue soak for the plant you were one day away from dropping in the trash. This is the big one. The reason so many people keep a bottle of peroxide right on the potting bench. Root rot almost always starts the same way. Too much water, not enough drainage, and the soil goes airless and soggy. In that drowning, oxygen-starved environment, water molds like Pythium, Phytophthora, and Fusarium move in and turn healthy white roots into brown, slimy mush. Up top, the plant yellows and wilts, even though the soil is soaking wet. Now, go back to that extra oxygen atom from the very first trick. When peroxide breaks down in the root zone, it oxidizes those water molds. At the very same time, it floods oxygen back into the suffocating soil, giving whatever healthy roots remain a fighting chance to breathe and recover. Here is how you do the rescue. Slide the plant out of its pot. Rinse the roots gently under the tap, and trim away every soft, brown, mushy root with clean scissors, keeping only the firm, pale, healthy ones. Mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 2 parts water, which gives you a gentle 1% solution, and soak those trimmed roots for 15 to 20 minutes, no longer. Then repot in fresh, dry potting mix in a clean pot that actually has drainage holes. The bonus here is really a piece of hard-won wisdom that no product label will tell you. Peroxide buys your plant time and knocks back the rot, but the only permanent cure is to water less. Save the plant today, then change the habit that drowned it, and you will not be back here next month, breathing oxygen back into soil that has gone compacted and waterlogged. Sometimes a plant is not infected yet. It is just drowning. The potting mix has packed down dense and soggy. Water sits on the surface instead of draining. The roots are gasping, and the leaves yellow and droop for no reason you can put your finger on. That airless, anaerobic soil is the exact condition root rot is sitting and waiting to take advantage of. A light peroxide drench relieves it, releasing oxygen into the root zone and breaking up that stagnant, suffocating layer so the roots can pull air again. Mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of water and pour it slowly over the soil of a pot that has already drained. Then let the plant dry out properly before you water it again. I will be straight with you, the way the experienced growers on the gardening forums always are. This does not replace fixing your drainage. If the pot has no holes or the mix is the wrong heavy kind that holds water like a sponge, peroxide only buys you time. But sometimes time is exactly what a struggling plant needs while you sort out the real problem, repot it, or move it somewhere it can dry. The bonus is the quiet relief you will see on that one sad pot that has been sulking on the windowsill for weeks, perking up once its roots can finally breathe. Before the last trick, do one small thing for someone who needs it. Think of one person in your life whose plants always seem to be struggling. Send them this video. It might save the very next plant they were about to give up on. The one for your cuttings and your water growers. More and more of you are rooting cuttings in a jar on the windowsill, or growing lettuce and herbs in a small hydroponic setup on the kitchen counter. But the enemy there is warm, still water with no oxygen in it, which is a perfect breeding ground for the same Pythium that causes root rot, plus algae, and that slimy biofilm that coats the roots and the glass. When you add a small amount of peroxide, Its breakdown raises the dissolved oxygen in the water and suppresses those pathogens and that slime. A study on hydroponic lettuce documented both the rise in dissolved oxygen and the disinfectant effect in the root zone. For a propagation jar, about 1 TSP of 3% hydrogen peroxide per quart of water is plenty. For a small reservoir, growers use roughly 1 to 3 milliliter of 3% hydrogen peroxide per gallon. Keep the water cool and out of direct light, because warm sunlit water is exactly what the rot loves, and change it regularly. The bonus is clearer water, and far less of that brown slime creeping up the stems of the cuttings you are working so hard to root. Go light, though. A little does the job, and too much will stress the very roots you are trying to grow. Knowing when to put the bottle down. This might be the most important on the entire list. It is an honest note because you deserve accurate information, not a sales pitch. Hydrogen peroxide does not know the difference between good and bad. It is non-selective. It kills the beneficial bacteria and the helpful mycorrhizal fungi that partner with your plant's roots, right along with the pathogens you are aiming at. If you keep fish in an aquaponic setup, a heavy dose can kill them too. It cannot fix chronic overwatering or bad drainage, which is the real cause behind most sick plants. Understand that peroxide treats the symptom while you fix the cause. Too strong a mix will burn roots and scorch leaves. Never use the 35% so-called food-grade peroxide undiluted. It causes serious chemical burns. Never mix peroxide with bleach, and do not mix it with vinegar in your reservoir, because that forms a harsher acid. Always dilute down to that gentle 3% strength or weaker. If you use beneficial soil products, wait at least 7 days after a peroxide drench before you apply them. Fix the watering first, always. That restraint is exactly what makes the other 8 tricks work. This was never really a list. It is one $3 bottle doing 3 jobs: protecting before trouble starts, treating when a problem is visible, and reviving when a plant looks lost. Protect, treat, revive, and the wisdom to stop. If you have spent decades learning the plants in your own yard, you have earned the right to rescue a struggling plant without a shelf full of $15 chemicals. The tomato by the back door or the rose your mother gave you doesn't need a chemical company solution. They need oxygen and the knowledge you now carry. If this guide on the hidden power of a simple brown bottle has changed how you look at your garden pharmacy, please subscribe and like the video. We are uncovering the simple truths that the big chemical companies would rather keep buried. Let's grow a healthier future together. Our next garden treasure will be revealed very soon. Tell me in the comments which of these 9 you are trying first and what plant you are trying to save right now. Now, go save that plant. I will see you in the next one.